Eric Heights was staying, but
Yep, I think he was gonna stay regardless. I know we all wanted Garth Lagerway, and I think he was gonna stay in Seattle regardless, and that's probably what I wouldn't be surprised if that's the reason why we re-signed Heights, and we're getting ready for another crappy season with him. But but yeah, so
so let me pound on these real quick. So there was news that FSG could have a deal with an what was it? Liverpool could have had a deal with an unnamed Qatar-based investor. That was way back when, but also we heard in this documentary that people in Qatar were exploring purchasing Liverpool for a deal up to $5 billion. Liverpool would really enter the big boys club at that point. I kind of wouldn't be surprised if that happened sometime in the next few years.
yeah, we actually see that a lot now. We see these billionaires that are buying up these clubs, these Premier League clubs, and they don't even care if they're taking a loss. To them, it's just okay. We could win. We could win. Um, I think that's probably the reason why they implemented those rules regarding, you know, salary. It's kind of like a semi-salary cap that you have to make money. You can't just buy players, and be on the red, but be rich enough to take the hit. So yeah, um, yeah, I did hear about that. That they're interested in buying Liverpool. The thing about it is that Qatar has been trying to develop their national team. And they have actually at one point they were trying to bring in players from overseas to play in their league, or they're trying to nationalize players. I think they actually almost got in trouble a couple of years ago where they were trying to nationalize a Brazilian player.
Named
Uh,
Ailton.
yep, and FIFA said no, we're not, no, you're not gonna break our system. So
And
they stopped
Brazil
that. No,
wouldn't sign him, and Germany wouldn't bring him up. And he was apparently scoring a lot of goals for, I think, Werder Bremen. But he just didn't look like the typical striker for him. But he was wicked good. He was scoring goals. And Qatar reached out and said, "Hey, we'll let you play for our team." And then FIFA stepped in and put the kibosh on that.
yep.
Chat
I think
asking a question about the Chicago Fire roster. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. I just wanted to finish off spearing a few of these Qatar World Cup topics before we move on to that stuff. Chicago Fire, U.S. men's national team, and a little bit of other stuff. Did you have a final thought on the Liverpool?
yeah, I think that's about it. I mean, fortunately, Liverpool went a different direction. Otherwise, if they would have gone with that, with the Qatar investments, I mean, can you imagine the firestorm they'll be dealing with now?
These might be the owners these might be new owners coming in next year.
Yeah.
These might be like Liverpool might be selling, and they might be selling to this Qatar-based investor.
And that's going to create a whole firestorm. That's like a PR nightmare.
Wow. Also, just to back up what you were talking about earlier, some human rights abuses. The Guardian reporting 6,500 migrant workers have died in Qatar since World Cup awarded, which is just
so imagine that. Think about that for a sec.
That's an abysmal number. Absolutely
6,000
horrendous.
people. 6,000 people have died building stadiums. And think about this for a sec. If we were to, if we were to build a stadium anywhere in the U.S., we will not have anybody die. Every now and then, accidents do happen, but not to the scale of 6,000 people.
Yeah, it seems like either something's being misreported, something's being fabricated, or something horrendous is being done, and like there's a massive amount of abuse, and people that they don't care. It just seems very odd. This doesn't line up, and we're seeing this reported not just from the Guardian but other sources as well. Just to touch on it, yeah.
And I think they mentioned 6,000 people, and I think that's a very, liberal estimate. I think there's people that said that there might be more. There's probably more.
Oh wow! Not less, more.
And keep in mind, Qatar has like a whole different setup in terms of like, let's say you bring your family along, right?
Mm-hmm.
Say you bring your wife, and let's say you have a kid that gets born in Qatar. They don't qualify for citizenship in Qatar.
It was an old fishing town. I mean, like only just about 100 years ago.
Yep.
And now it got oil. Angus reporting that the Qatari government says that not that many people have died. But the other question is the other point is, when were they building these stadiums? During the summer when it's 140-degree heat? No wonder there's people dropping like flies if that's the case.
Yep. Well, yeah, think about it. You're working out in the sun. It's 150 degrees, 140 degrees out in the desert.
And then in a construction zone, it's even more hot. So it could be even, I mean, there's welding, there's metal, there's heating up. There's so much heat being generated. And then on top of that, they probably had to do it during the night a lot of times. So, I mean, like, I think about some of the places in the United States where they do construction at night for that very reason.
Yeah, exactly. It's and even then, even if they do stuff like that in the United States, most of it is mostly all union backed anyways.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so they're not gonna get away with not even a quarter of what's going on in Qatar.
Definitely no unions out in Qatar.
Yeah.
I'll move on from it. I thought this is another one just to close up our shop of our depressing side of the World Cup before we get to the bright side of the World Cup, because we're getting to the bright side. We're just gonna deal with this a little bit. There's a German reporter outside just doing a report, and these Qatar people just came out and started hassling them. They tried to break the camera, and this is a respected reporter from Germany who's just doing, and the way that these people are treating their guests, that's to me is what's the kind of you guys we're these people, you've seen it in so many other host nations where they treat the fans and the pundits and the people, soccer fans, as guests in their nation, and so I just haven't seen that yet from some of the media that's been coming across. Maybe that changes.
Yeah, I mean, it's it's getting serious when you have reporters getting attacked. I think last week I caught the tail end of it where Tokyo was mentioning that the Qatari government had people out across the world, making sure people weren't talking bad about Qatar. I don't know how true that was, but yeah, it's just when they say, if you're trying to keep a low profile, don't make a lot of noise.
Right.
This is one of those situations where Qatar's trying to keep a low profile, but they're pretty much have the bullhorn and screaming out loud that they're hosting the World Cup.
Right.
It's
the eyes of the world are upon them. Angus saying that the contractors are relentless out there with the building. Since it's on the Persian Gulf, it's humid at night and very dry during the day. Those are the conditions that they have to deal with, that along with the extreme heat.
Yep.
Just absolutely. So just there's some slight things. This is pretty crazy though. 137 players will be playing in the World Cup for a different country than the one they were born in. How crazy is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 14 for Morocco, 12 for Tunis, 12 for Senegal, 10 for Qatar, 10 for Wales, 9 of them English players, 1 of them is a German. Australia has 9 internationals that are, not native Australians, so to speak, or they're dual internationals. A lot of names that I recognize from Football Manager.
Yeah. Well, think about it. A lot of these guys, especially a lot of guys from France, from Germany, England, even Spain, a lot of those guys, their families migrated from somewhere else, or they were born in another country and grew up in, their current respective countries. One, prime example would be a guy like I believe Shaqiri. Wasn't Shaqiri born in Kosovo and he migrated to Switzerland?
I think Zlatan also not a native Sweden too. I mean, there's a lot of those cases.
Yeah,
and it's happening more and more so. And it's funny that Qatar is even connected to that, because they tried to bring Ailton. They were the first to try and do that on the big time scale. And they got their pee-pee slapped.
Yep.
By FIFA. And now it's cool. Now it's cool beans.
Well, I think there's certain rules to it. I mean, obviously, for example, you have to have some sort of connection to the country you're representing. You know, whether you grew up in there or whether you went through the academy
Right.
or your parents were born there. You
And
have
that's
to
why
have
we
some
see a
sort of
lot of these
connection.
French players on a lot of these teams, because a lot of those players played in or they migrated to France. A lot of these African nations, Senegal, Cameroon,
Yep.
Tunis, is right across the pond from right across the
The sh-
Mediterranean Sea.
Yep.
So they're real
And
close too. Yeah.
yeah, you think about that, but then you think about the situation that's the scenario we're talking about with the Brazilian and Qatar. You know, that guy had no connection whatsoever. If anything, it looked more like a transfer than
Right,
anything.
yeah,
Like
and they
paid
were
him.
paying him like 1.5 million a year
Yep.
plus 500K plus. So you're right. Yeah, it was more like a transfer than it was
No.
international. So yeah, but we do see players being allowed to make the change later in their careers as long as they meet certain parameters. It seems.
I Yeah. So I think again, you still have to have a connection to the country you want to represent. Uh, and I think it's a one-time change. You know, so I think a lot of that has to do, like for example, we had that situation happen with when we had an American player switch over to Mexico.
So
Um,
I'm looking at Mexico's roster. And actually, they
maybe
talked about this. Not a single Mexican American and not a single Mexican American on the U.S. roster or the Mexican roster. How surprising is that?
it is surprising.
By the way, there are two Americans playing for other nations. One of them really hurts. The other is Daniel Schmidt. He plays for Japan. Daniel Schmidt,
And he was
American, plays for
and he was
Japan.
born he was born in Illinois.
Really?
Yes.
And then the other American that his name really hurts plays for Canada, and that's Jonathan David.
Yep.
Croatia has a few, Portugal has a good number, has a few Brazilians, and USA has 5. Anthony Robinson from England, Serginho Dest from Netherlands, Cameron Carter-Vickers from England, Jesus Ferreira, I think that's Paraguay.
Colombia.
Colombia. Okay, thank you for correcting. And Giovanni Reina. Gio is American. But
Well, the thing about Gio was that he was born while his dad was playing
in England,
in
right?
England. Yes.
Mm-hmm. So that
Nah,
makes
I
him in
think
English.
well, I would consider his case a little different compared to Vickers and compared to Robinson, even Sergino Dest, where you know they were they had a parent that was from the U.S. You know, Gio Reyna actually, I believe he went through the NYFC academy for a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he actually grew up in the States. It just happens that he happened to be born where his dad was playing at the
Yeah, so
time.
that one to me I could throw out because I immediately was like, yeah, his dad's Captain America. His dad was Captain America. Like what?
Yeah.
Like that's crazy. Brother BKL saying that neither Chicharito has been called, and that's kind of crazy. Only just from EPL and Syria area. And I have a question for you. If you could pull an Ailton and bring Chicharito for the U.S. men's national team as their striker, would you do that in this World Cup if the option had presented itself?
No. And that's actually one of my bones to pick is the fact that the U.S. roster. I don't know. I'm like, to me, it's a lot of kind of like